Assalamu alaikum all. I hope you are all fine. Again, just to remind you of myself, this is Mrs. Amal Ali, and I will be teaching you Introduction to Literature for this course. Now, the book I have chosen is Introduction to Literature, prepared by Dr. Dima Ammari. It's quite long to be taught for the summer course, and therefore I will be reducing it. I'm not going to teach it thoroughly, and I'm going to change the play as well. I chose another play for you. Later on I will tell you where to bring it from. That's it. Now, in Introduction to Literature, the book will be dealing with different genres of literature: short stories, poetry, and plays, drama. We should learn all of these genres and the general features of each one of them. When we say the word literature, what do we mean by literature? It is every written thing. We call it literature. It can be fiction or non-fiction. But many theorists believe that literature is special because it has artistic features, and that literature has a very special language, elevated, a language with some kind of superiority, because it addresses beauties and aspects of beauty. Anyway, now when we talk about any kind of writing, then it's either fiction or non-fiction. In this course, we are interested only with fiction, okay? Not with non-fiction. When we say non-fiction, we mean something real, factual, like things we find in science, in history, in biographies, in geography. So you have mainly facts, numbers, true things, okay? So, but when we say fiction, then we mean by it anything that is made up or shaped by the writer. It has to do with imagination. It is based on imagination. The author, the writer, creates things. He becomes the creator of his work. The term fiction first was used in this sense in the year of 1599, which means the end of the 16th century, the beginning of the 17th century. Now we say that fiction has a separate identity. It's special with an identity because it originates in the creative imaginative powers. So it has to do with creation, with imagination, as if we compare it to any other field or discipline. If you compare it to science, to religion, to math, to any other topic, it is the thing, it is the field that is based on imagination and on creativity. That's why it has its separate identity. Now, the essence of fiction is narration, to narrate the events. Now, the author creates a story, creates characters, creates events. How does he narrate them to us? How do they reach us? In which structure, in which shape? That's what we call and what we mean by the word narration, as opposed to the drama, the plays. We don't have narration in the drama, in the plays. We just have people talking all the time, dialogue, but not narrating, saying this happened and that happened, okay? Fiction is first rooted in ancient legends and myths that were transmitted orally through traveling storytellers. Do you know what do we mean by myths and legends? Now, long time ago, before Christ even, in the ancient Greek civilization and cultures, people had no technology, no science to explain for them how things happen in life, in the world, in the galaxy. And the human being by nature is curious to learn. A man would like to learn by nature how things happen. Why do we have the day and the night and the moon and the sun and the four seasons? Why do we have wars? So they started creating stories about gods controlling life, gods for love, gods for war. They created a myth why we have day and night. It was about a prince who married a princess who lived under the water. When he brought her to the sun, she couldn't see, she wanted sunlight. They brought her sunlight from under the ocean. They are fictionalized stories that would satisfy man's need to understand about nature, though they were not true. Storytellers would move from one place to another, telling people these myths and these legends, and people would listen attentively to them. Although what they say is fictionalized, is not real, but they tend to believe in that and to believe it's like history. Um, Now, legends and epics. The epic is like a long tale, a very long story, a tale with many episodes, with many people inside this epic. It's like a very long poem, and then the storyteller will be chanting it as if it's a song. Why would chant it? To make people hear it, like it, and memorize it. Now, in the epics, like the epics of Homer, about the Trojan Wars, for example, there are stories of many leaders and many fighters and many people die and many countries fall and many people win. So many stories inside a very, very long epic that people will be listening, yani would be listening to it for several days and memorizing them. Why were these legends and epics narrated and told to people and sung and chanted? Mainly to entertain people. They did not have TVs just like we do or internet, so they would just like enjoy listening to such kind of epics or legends. They reinforced the local religions and the power structures. How? Like they believed in some gods, so when they listened to the myths or to these legends, they would respect their gods, the aspects of their religion, of their rituals. The power structures, so they have that respect and obedience to the leader, to the king, to the powerful parties, so you just show them your loyalty all the time. Now, as well, we have what we call the fables of Aesop, and these are very short tales about animals. Mainly, the characters are animals, like the mouse in the lion, how the mouse was able to rescue the life of the lion that was trapped in a net by opening a hole in that net. Now, each tale of Aesop tales is meant to teach a lesson, ethics, some ethics and values, as well as the parables of Jesus that were um, uh, reported and written down later in the Old Testament and in the Bible. Just like we have so many stories in the Holy Quran about prophets, about nations, about wars, about different things. So still, they make a kind of narration. Someone is narrating to us the events of what happened. Now, when we say the legends, the epics, and the myths had their entertaining purposes to give you fun listening to them, and to reinforce and to strengthen the local religions, so to respect their religion, their gods, whatever, and the power structure to the leader. Now, the Aesop and the parables in the Quran or the holy books, they had their moralistic argumentative aspect. So they focus on religious values, philosophical or psychological concerns. So they teach you morals, like even insignificant creatures like a mouse could be helpful and rescue the life of the king of the forest. So you should appreciate the value of everything Allah created. So you learn that valued. When Ibrahim alayhi salam submitted to God when he asked him to kill his son, it teaches you a moral. So these tales are meant to teach you a moral, religious, philosophic, or psychological concerns. Now, in the 15th century and 16th century, storytelling was developed to fine art, Fine here we mean by it's elevated, art that surpasses, that shows excellency, superiority. That happened at the hand of famous authors and writers such as Geoffrey Chaucer and William Shakespeare in the 16th century, whose writings actually heavily depended on legends and history. But they took the historical events or names, but they added to them their imaginations to make them fine art that would surpass history. Surpass means become higher than history. Now, when we talk about the modern fiction, okay, then we talk about the fiction, the kind of imaginative writing that appeared in the late 17th century and 18th century. Now, the focus shifted from gods and goddesses and adventures and leaders and kings. It is shifted to human, to everyday man, you and me. It is shifted to the nature of a human being, his psychological concerns, what makes him happy, sad, angry, the way he responds to the experiences, to the life, to the existence. So it becomes more individualistic. It cares more about the human being. Now, even the place and the time, the setting, they start to be realistic. So we get to, of course, like if you heard of James Joyce Dubliners, a collection of short stories. Dubliners is related to Dublin, okay? So it is related to a specific real place. Many stories take place in London and in very realistic places in London. In the time of the industrialization, many people suffered poverty in London. They lived in very poor and dirty places. So you would find a story like the ones or novels written by Charles Dickens that would show the kind of suffering people lived in poverty during that period of time. So the time and the places become realistic ones, not imaginative ones. Now, we care a lot in the modern fiction about the environment, which is the background where the characters come from. From which political background did they come? Does it show a kind of conflict, wars? What kind of religious background, educational background? Where does this character study? Where did he get his education? What is his social rank? Is he rich or poor? So that's what we mean by the word environment. We care about the background from which these characters came. Now, in the past, in the time of Shakespeare in the 16th century and before that, a writer would not gain lots of money because of their work. How would they make money when they write? The only way was that their work would be performed on the stage, on the theater. So people come, pay money, get a ticket, and leave. So this is limited to the people who live close to the theater or to the people who can afford, who can get enough money to attend such kind of performances. Therefore, not so many people wanted to write at that period of time because it was something tough and hard. Whereas later later on in the 17th and 18th century, levels of education and literacy being able to read and write and going to schools, increased in the 18th century. And we started to have publishing houses and publishers. So the writer would bring his work, give it to the publisher. The publisher would say, make many copies of the book or the story or the novel, sell them and get lots of money, pay some money for the author, and then get the rest as their own benefits. Now, having a large number of publication makes more authors like to write because they can now take it as a career, make their livings and get the money they need to live. And that's a reason why fiction becomes wider and spread all over the world. Now we will move to this title that says the short story. Now we have the author Edgar Allan Poe, and I'm sorry here that the date of his birth is wrong. It's not 1909 but 1809 to 1849. He died young, Maskeen. He was only 40 years old. He developed a theory of short story. He said, why would people read a very long novel that needs several days to be read and comprehended. And he says people are very busy with their work, life, education, business, so they cannot concentrate on reading a long piece of work. So he preferred, in his theory of short story, to read a short tale of something as opposed to the long novels. For him, it's ideal, it's perfect to read a short story that gives you a powerful and single impression. You read it at one sitting, half an hour, 1 hour, that's it. You get the value, the theme, the message, you enjoy it, you have this entertainment. For him, that would be enough. Now, a list of famous short story writers may include William Faulkner, Ernest Hemingway, Guy de Maupassant, and that's a French author, and Alice Walker. I think that's it for today, because we're just starting with something late, and later on we'll be taking longer things. After I finish with the introduction to literature, I will send you a handout in which I summarize everything. Mainly you can depend on this handout to study for the exams because it summarizes things in a good and a clear way. Thank you so much, and inshallah we'll continue later on.